Hey,
Hey there, what's up? Feel free to throw any questions or ideas at me.
okay, I'm trying to pressure test this idea. And the other day um I posted a reel where I went to Panera and effectively dropped $72 on two 24-ounce containers of soup, some grilled cheese sandwiches, and another sandwich. And a lot of people in my comments were like, "Oh, well, we don't even go out anymore. That's why you should just stay home and cook." And even though I do that, I have some concerns with that theory because, from a socioeconomic perspective or even sociological, um, I'm trying to figure out how much of a society's value or happiness score is derived from things like social interaction and food culture where you're actually going out to eat and you're not buried at home.
Yeah, that's a really interesting angle to look at it from. It's not just about the cost of a meal, right? There's definitely a bigger social component to eating out. The whole culture of gathering, socializing, and experiencing food as a shared activity. And that definitely has an impact on well being and community feeling. So, if you're thinking about it from a sociological or even socioeconomic angle, it makes total sense to explore how these social habits actually contribute to people's overall happiness.
Yeah, and I mean, outside of the economic impact of supporting small businesses, I think the notion that we're becoming a culture or a society where no one can afford to go out to eat and people just retreat into their homes could be extremely harmful.
Absolutely. And it's a really valid concern. If you think about it, restaurants and similar places are kind of like the modern day social hubs. They're where people meet up, celebrate, or just get a change of scenery from their daily routines. If those kinds of outings start to feel like a luxury that only a few can afford, you lose a piece of that communal fabric. And yeah, beyond just the dollars and cents of supporting local businesses, there's a social cost if people feel isolated at home. It could make communities feel less connected or just less vibrant. So it's definitely a bigger conversation than just the price of soup and sandwiches.
Okay. Talk to me about what the research says in terms of how impactful or negatively impactful COVID was to social interaction, and if there's any kind of long-term measurable effects after, it's been 5 years. So,
So, in a nutshell, the research is pretty clear that COVID had some deep and lasting impacts on how we socialize. Even 5 years on, a lot of people, especially older adults, are still a bit more isolated than they were before. There has been a noticeable hit to mental health, and while digital ways of socializing have stepped in, they haven't fully replaced the real life social glue. So, yeah, those long term effects are definitely there and still unfolding.
okay. So what you're saying is that just simply saying, "Oh, don't go out to eat," and either let businesses, kind of rule themselves or go out of business isn't really the right answer. Got it.
Exactly. You got it. It's kind of a simplistic answer to a more nuanced problem. Just telling everyone to stay home and cook really doesn't address those social and community layers or the long term effects of losing those shared public spaces. So, yeah, it's definitely more layered than just, hey, stay home and cook every meal.
Okay, so along those same lines, let's talk economics real quick. When people say, just don't go, you're the reason why prices are so high because you continue to pay them. I feel like that's a bit of a red herring, just simply because if you look at, historical data, a lot of businesses end up really just cutting cost, price protecting, and, eventually they're going to lower operating cost and close restaurants and stores and effectively give the other businesses that remain a monopoly. Does that line of thinking make sense, or am I like way overboard here?
No, that line of thinking definitely makes sense, and you're not overboard at all. It's a pretty common economic dynamic. When people just stop spending in certain sectors altogether, businesses that can't handle those pressures either shrink or disappear. And the ones that can weather the storm often do consolidate more market share, which can reduce competition and, ironically, keep prices high in the long run. So, yeah, it's not just about individual choices, but also the broader economic ripple effects. The idea that just stop buying and prices will drop doesn't always hold up because businesses react in ways that can actually lead to less competition and fewer choices. So, you're definitely on the right track with that reasoning.
So why does classical economic theory preach this, supply and demand and price increase and decrease based on those factors? I think, for a small mom and pop, that makes sense. But when you have corporations that can, accept losses in certain markets because, they're making record profits in other markets, I think they're able to, sort of weather the storm.
Yeah, you're hitting on a really important distinction there. Classical economic theory often assumes a sort of ideal world of small players and perfect competition, where if demand drops, prices naturally fall because no one has the market power to do anything else. But in the real world, especially with big corporations, it's not so simple. Larger companies do have that ability to absorb losses in one area because they're making money elsewhere, and that lets them hold on longer, control the market more, and not necessarily follow that neat supply and demand script. So you're right. For a small mom and pop shop, those classical rules might still apply more directly. But for large corporations, the landscape is different, and they can sort of play the long game, which changes how these economic forces work.
Got it.
Yeah, it's definitely a big